Section 18 of The Princess and Curdie. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. The Princess and Curdie by George MacDonald. Chapters 31 to 32. Chapter 31. The Sacrifice. Things in the palace were in a strange condition. The king playing with a child and dreaming wise dreams, waited upon by a little princess with the heart of a queen, and a youth from the mines who went nowhere, not even into the king's chamber, without his mattock on his shoulder and a horrible animal at his heels. In a room near by, the colonel of his guard, also in bed, without a soldier to obey him. In 6 other rooms, far apart, 6 miscreants, each watched by a beast jailer, ministers to them all, an old woman and a page. And in the wine cellar, 43 animals, creatures more grotesque than ever brain of man invented. None dared to approach its gates, and seldom one issued from them. All the dwellers in the city were united in enmity to the palace. It swarmed with evil spirits, they said, whereas the evil spirits were in the city, unsuspected. One consequence of their presence was that, when the rumour came that a great army was on the march against Gwyntystorm, instead of rushing to their defences, to make new gates, free portcullises and drawbridges, and bar the river, each band flew first to their treasures, burying them in the cellars and gardens, and hiding them behind stones in their chimneys. And, next to rebellion, signing an invitation to his Majesty of Borsagrass to enter at their open gates, destroy their king, and annex their country to his own. The straits of isolation were soon found in the palace. Its invalids were requiring stronger food, and what was to be done? For if the butchers sent meat to the palace, was it not likely enough to be poisoned? Curdie said to Derba he would think of some plan before morning. But that same night, as soon as it was dark, Lena came to her master, and let him understand that she wanted to go out. He unlocked a little private postern for her, left it so that she could push it open when she returned, and told the crocodile to stretch himself across it inside. Before midnight she came back with a young deer. Early the next morning the leg serpent crept out of the wine cellar, through the broken door behind, shot into the river, and soon appeared in the kitchen with a splendid sturgeon. Every night Lena went out hunting, and every morning leg serpent went out fishing, and both invalids and household had plenty to eat. As to news, the page, in plain clothes, would now and then venture out into the market-place and gather some. One night he came back with the report that the army of the king of Borsagrass had crossed the border. 2 days after, he brought the news that the enemy was now but 20 miles from Gwyntystorm. The colonel of the guard rose and began furbishing his armour, but gave it over to the page and staggered across to the barracks, which were in the next street. The sentry took him for a ghost, or worse, ran into the guard-room, bolted the door, and stopped his ears. The poor colonel, who was hardly yet able to stand, crawled back despairingly. For Curdie, he had already, as soon as the first rumour reached him, resolved, if no other instruments came, and the king continued unable to give orders, to call Lena and the creatures and march to meet the enemy. If he died for the right, and there was a right end of it. He had no preparations to make, except a good sleep. He asked the king to let the housemaid take his place by his majesty that night, and went and lay down on the floor of the corridor, no farther off than a whisper would reach from the door of the chamber. There, with an old mantle of the king's thrown over him, he was soon fast asleep. Somewhere, about the middle of the night, he woke suddenly, started to his feet, and rubbed his eyes. He could not tell what had waked him. But could he be awake, or was he not dreaming? The curtain of the king's door, a dull red ever before, was glowing a radiant purple, and the crown wrought upon it in silks and gems was flashing as if it burned. What could it mean? Was the king's chamber on fire? He darted to the door and lifted the curtain. Glorious, terrible sight! A long and broad marble table, that stood at the end of one room, had been drawn into the middle of it, and thereon burned a great fire, of a sort that Curdie knew, a fire of glowing, flaming roses, red and white. In the midst of the roses lay the king, moaning but motionless. Every rose that fell from the table to the floor, some one, whom Curdie could not plainly see for the brightness, lifted and laid burning upon the king's face, until at length his face too was covered with the live roses, and he lay all within the fire, moaning still, with now and then a shuddering sob. And the shape that Curdie saw and could not see wept over the king as he lay in the fire, and often she hid her face in handfuls of her shadowy hair, and from her hair the water of her weeping dropped like sunset rain in the light of the roses. At last she lifted a great armful of her hair and shook it over the fire, and the drops fell from it in showers, and they did not hiss in the flames, but there arose instead as if it were the sound of running brooks. And the glow of the red fire died away, and the glow of the white fire grew grey, and the light was gone, and on the table all was black, except the face of the king, which shone from under the burnt roses like a diamond in the ashes of a furnace. Then Curdie, no longer dazzled, saw and knew the old princess. The room was lighted with the splendour of her face, of her blue eyes, of her sapphire crown. Her golden hair went streaming out from her through the air till it went off in mist and light. She was large and strong as a Titaness. She stooped over the table altar, put her mighty arms under the living sacrifice, lifted the king, as if he were but a little child, to her bosom, walked with him up the floor, and laid him in his bed. Then darkness fell. The miner boy turned silent away, and laid himself down again in the corridor. An absolute joy filled his heart, his bosom, his head, his whole body. All was safe, all was well. With the helve of his mattock tight in his grasp, he sank into a dreamless sleep. Chapter 32. The King's Army. He woke like a giant refreshed with wine. When he went into the king's chamber, the housemaid sat where he had left her, and everything in the room was as it had been the night before, save that a heavenly odour of roses filled the air of it. He went up to the bed. The king opened his eyes, and the soul of perfect health shone out of them. Nor was Curdie amazed in his delight. "Is it not time to rise, Curdie?" asked the king. "It is, your majesty. Today we must be doing," answered Curdie. "What must we be doing today, Curdie?" "Fighting, sire." "Then fetch me my armour, that of plated steel, in the chest there. You will find the underclothing with it." As he spoke he reached out his hand for his sword, which hung in the bed before him, drew it, and examined the blade. "A little rusty," he said, "but the edge is there. We shall polish it ourselves today, not on the wheel. Curdie, my son, I wake from a troubled dream. A glorious torture has ended it, and I live. I know now well how things are, but you shall explain them to me as I get on my armour. No, I need no bath. I am clean. Call the colonel of the guard." In complete steel the old man stepped into the chamber. He knew it not, but the old princess had passed through his room in the night. "Why, Sir Bronzebeard," said the king, "you are dressed before me. You need no valet, old man, when there is battle in the wind." "Battle, sire," returned the colonel. "Where then are our soldiers?" "Why, there and here," answered the king, pointing to the colonel first and then to himself. "Where else, man? The enemy will be upon us ere sunset, if we be not upon him ere noon. What other thing was in your brave brain when you donned your armour, friend?" "Your Majesty's orders, sire," answered Sir Bronzebeard. The king smiled and turned to Curdie. "And what was in you, Curdie? For your first word was of battle." "See, your Majesty," answered Curdie, "I have polished my mattock. If your Majesty had not taken the command, I would have met the enemy at the head of my beasts, and died in comfort, or done better." "Brave boy," said the king. "He who takes his life in his hand is the only soldier. You shall head your beasts today. Sir Bronzebeard, will you die with me if need be?" "7 times, my king," said the colonel. "Then we shall win this battle," said the king. "Curdie, go and bind securely the 6, that we not lose their guards. Can you find me a horse, think you, Sir Bronzebeard? Alas, they told me my white charger was dead." "I will go and fright the varletry with my presence, and secure, I trust, a horse for your Majesty and one for myself." "Ah, look you, brother," said the king, "bring one for my miner boy too, and a sober old charger for the princess, for she too must go to the battle, and conquer with us." "Pardon me, sire," said Curdie, "a miner can fight best on foot. I might smite my horse dead under me with a missed blow, and beside that I must be near to my beasts." "As you will," said the king. 3 horses then, Sir Bronzebeard." The colonel departed, doubting sorely in his heart how to accoutre and lead from the barrack stables 3 horses in the teeth of his revolted regiment. In the hall he met the housemaid. "Can you lead a horse?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Are you willing to die for the king?" "Yes, sir." "Can you do as you are bid?" "I can keep on trying, sir." "Come then, were I not a man, I would be a woman, such as you." When they entered the barrack yard, the soldiers scattered like autumn leaves before a blast of winter. They went into the stable unchallenged, and lo! in a stall before the colonel's eyes stood the king's white charger, with the royal saddle and bridle hung high beside him. "Traitorous thieves!" muttered the old man in his beard, and went along the stalls looking for his own black charger. Having found him, he returned to saddle first the king's. But the maid had already the saddle upon him, and so gird that the colonel could thrust no finger tip between girth and skin. He left her to finish what she had so well begun, and went and made ready his own. He then chose for the princess a great red horse, 20 years old, which he knew to possess every equine virtue. This and his own he led to the palace, and the maid led the king's. The king and Curdie stood in the court, the king in full armour of silvered steel, with a circlet of rubies and diamonds round his helmet. He almost leaped for joy when he saw his great white charger come in, gentle as a child to the hand of the housemaid. But when the horse saw his master in his armour, he reared and bounded in jubilation, yet did not break from the hand that held him. Then out came the princess attired and ready, with a hunting knife her father had given her by her side. They brought her mother's saddle, splendent with gems and gold, set it on the great red horse, and lifted her to it. But the saddle was so big and the horse so tall, that the child found no comfort in them. "Please, King Papa," she said, "can I not have my white pony?" "I did not think of him, little one," said the king. "Where is he?" "In the stable," answered the maid. "I found him half starved, the only horse within the gates, the day after the servants were driven out. He has been well fed since." "Go and fetch him," said the king. As the maid appeared with the pony, from a side door came Lina and the 49, following Curdie. "I will go with Curdie and the Uglies," cried the princess, and as soon as she was mounted she got into the middle of the pack. So out they set, the strangest force that ever went against an enemy. The king in silver armour sat stately on his white steed, with the stones flashing on his helmet. Beside him the grim old colonel, armed in steel, rode his black charger. Behind the king, a little to the right, Curdie walked afoot, his mattock shining in the sun. Lena followed at his heel. Behind her came the wonderful company of Uglies. In the midst of them rode the gracious little Irene, dressed in blue, and mounted on the prettiest of white ponies. Behind the colonel, a little to the left, walked the page, armed in a breastplate, headpiece, and trooper's sword he had found in the palace, all much too big for him, and carrying a huge brass trumpet, which he did his best to blow, and the king smiled and seemed pleased with his music, although it was but the grunt of a brazen unrest. Alongside the beasts walked Derba, carrying Barbara, their refuge the mountains, should the cause of the king be lost. As soon as they were over the river they turned aside to ascend the cliff, and there awaited the forging of the day's history. Then first Curdie saw that the housemaid, whom they had all forgotten, was following, mounted on the great red horse and seated in the royal saddle. Many were the eyes unfriendly of women that had stared at them from door and window as they passed through the city, and low laughter and mockery and evil words from the lips of children had rippled about their ears. But the men had all gone to welcome the enemy, the butchers first, the king's guard the last, and now on the heel of the king's army rushed out the women and children also, to gather flowers and branches wherewith to welcome their conquerors. About a mile down the river, Curdie, happening to look behind him, saw the maid, whom he had supposed gone with Derba, still following on the great red horse. The same moment the king, a few paces in front of him, caught sight of the enemy's tents, pitched where, the cliffs receding, the bank of the river widened to a little plain. Section 18